Yum! Cardboard.
How's it going, YouTube Nation, and Happy New Year's to everyone out there. In my last video, I talked about how I spent most of that year just doing comic book conventions, weekend after weekend after weekend. I did on average, about 35 to 40 conventions last year, which was insane and hectic all over the place in Michigan, Ohio, here in Ontario, and in Quebec. And I've been doing conventions for quite some years now, and I've learned a lot of lessons um, doing this. I thought let's start this year right by coming out with some videos, just sharing my 2 cents on what it's like doing conventions, and more importantly, what I've learned. Now, these are just my experiences and my thoughts, and you might not agree with some of this stuff, but there's no harm in just putting it out there and seeing what you think. Especially, and you don't even have to be in comic books. You could be in anything that's related to doing conventions or trade shows, and hopefully my experiences will help you out. So the first thing I want to touch on in this video is about communication and engaging buyers, engaging potential customers. Let me start off with a personal story, a personal observation. This actually happened 2 years ago, but I'll never forget this guy. I don't know who he is, but his artwork was majestic, like just absolutely amazing artwork. Like, this guy should be working for Marvel or DC. But he was a paid vendor. He wasn't a feature at all. He was a paid booth like the rest of us. I think that show was about $400 to $500 for the 10x10 booth. But he was across from me, right across from me. So where I'm standing here, he would be on the other side of the aisle. And he had this beautiful display, great work. And that's another video I'll touch upon, and how to display and get people's attention. But he had a great display showing all his amazing artwork of Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, all these characters. And it was a 2-day convention. On Saturday, he was there, and this guy should be making killer money. But let's just say, let me fast track the story a bit. He packed up early on Sunday and went home. Again, he paid to be there like the rest of us, but he packed up early and went home. And I know why it happened. Because during this whole convention, he pretty much had his display. He was sitting down and he was doodling. He was on his phone, and people be coming up, looking at his stuff, and then he's not engaging them whatsoever, and then they walk on. Now, he did make some sales, but the sales he made were people specifically coming right up to him like, I want that. Like they had to pretty much tell him, I'm ready to buy that piece. But he did zero work in engaging any of them. And, I was talking to one of my neighbors, and he saw him as kind of arrogant. Now, I'm not going to make that judgment on a person I don't know, but he put zero effort into engaging or talking to anybody, even those people who bought off of him. He just kind of took the money and then put it in a bag, and then that was it. And I've never forgotten that guy, because it shows that even when you have amazing artwork, when you have amazing product, if you don't engage with people, interact with people, you're not going to do well. And I learned that lesson from when I started this like 7 years ago. I went right into the Lion's Den. I was at Fan Expo. And when I decided to jump into doing Comic Cons, my first ever comic, Rock, Paper, Scissors, Paper, Rock, Scissors, and Stuff Wars, more specifically. And my first day was horrendous. I made zero sales because I pretty much just stood there, and I didn't want to interrupt people as people walk by. It was an insane mindset. I'm there to make money, and I'm just watching people walk by, hoping that someone will come up and they will do the process. They will engage me, so then I can engage them and make the sale. And that tactic did not work, and I learned very quickly that that's not the way you're supposed to do things. Now, I'm an introvert by nature, and I know this might shock people who have met me at Comic Cons, because I talk a mile a minute. But I am actually quite introverted, quite private. My wife and I are very quiet people. But I had to break out of my shell, which I know is not easy. But if you want to make sales, you have to. If you want to get your product out there and build a fan base, you have to. And over the years, I've quaffed and created my own technique and an elevator speech, which is something that you need. You need to know your product so perfectly, so eloquently, that you could grab people's attention and sell to them. Because no matter what people tell you, especially, and again, I'm talking about comic book conventions, but this could be a trade show, could be whatever show you're at. People do want to be sold to. Don't let anyone fool you and lie to you saying that they don't want to be sold to, people just want to be left alone. That's not why they're there. Yes, some might be there for celebrities and, maybe for grading services or whatever, but they know there's vendors trying to introduce them to new product. The question is, how do you do it? How do you engage people? And for me, what I did and what I learned is that, again, depending on which book I have an elevator speech for it. And not only that, you learn about body language. And it took me time to understand this, where not every person who walks by your booth or even looks at your booth is interested in what you're doing. But there's a certain look, there's a certain posture you'll get from patrons who walk by. And okay, there's a little bit of a spark. And this actually also has to do with how you display your table and your booth and your backdrop behind you, which is something I could talk about later on in another video. But once you get that look, be friendly, engage them. And what I do, so I have my comic books out. So I'll use one of my books, Rock, Paper, Scissors, for example. So I have my displays, and I'll make sure that I'll have some of my cardboard art and my books out right in front. And so I'll have people who will be walking by and they'll have like a confused look on their face, like, what am I looking at? And once I see that look, I'm Scorpion. I'm like, okay, mentally, get over here. I'm bringing you over. So what I'll say to them is, you're wondering what that is. It looks weird, right? And if they respond back, now some people might just like, whatever, and they'll walk away, and that's fine. But if they're still there and they're like, yeah, what is that? I was like, oh, well, come in, let me show you. And then I'll go on to the next stage, which is, the hand game Rock, Paper, Scissors, right? What if I told you that I have Rock, Paper, Scissors brought to life as a planetary war between empires on a distant planet? And then from there, you gauge their facial expression and their body language. If they're still engaged, if they're inwards, it's kind of like a date. If you see them leaning inwards, like, they're intrigued, they're still listening, I was like, okay. And then this is when I go into the elevator speech, and I'll give you my elevator speech for this book. I'll go, okay, the book, and one of the key is you want them interacting with the book. So you're opening it up and you're even putting a copy in their hand. So I'll have a copy and then I'll take another copy. This is another issue number 2, but I'll put the same copy in their hand. So they're kind of going along with me. And I'll go, the book starts off with the near genocide of the papers by the Scissors Empire. Now, saying something like that is going to get a response out of them regardless. Some people might laugh. Some people like, ooh, wow, that's like heavy right off the bat. But it's getting them engaged. And I was like, okay, now the papers escape and they find these indestructible rocks with one weakness. I paused for a second. I was like, they're claustrophobic. Again, I'm watching their responses, and many times people will laugh or they'll say like, oh, yes, paper beats rocks, rocks are claustrophobic. I get it. And once I get that positivity, that smile, I keep it going. And then right after that, so I'm explaining things, but what I would say is, okay, the genocide, or if I want to use a lesser powerful word, I would say that the papers were wiped out by the Scissors Empire. The papers escaped. They found these indestructible rocks with one weakness. They're claustrophobic. But wait, now it gets weird. And usually when I say that, then I get a laugh. Like, oh God, it's not weird already. And then I'll just finish off by saying, now there's floating anvil gods, water, sand, and plastic are empires, and there's glue armies that could stick to anything, and they're the most powerful race on the planet, and stuff like that. And people listen, and by that time, I've already created a rapport, and this whole speech takes less than a minute. I've already created a rapport, got some of them laughing, got some of them intrigued, and many times sometimes it will result in a sale right then and there, and they'll want to know, okay, how many issues do you have? How much per issue? What are your plans with it? But many times people will still walk away, but I know they have more of a convention to look at, but they will actually come back because they're thinking about it. I got it in their head, but all of that is because I communicated, and I communicated efficiently and directly in less than a minute. So I'm rambling on right now because I'm explaining all this, but all this interaction takes place in 1 minute flat. And I gave them all the information they need to make a decision. They saw the artwork, they were holding it and touching it and seeing it for themselves. And I will also let them know, like, my artist is Hugh Rookwood, who's done covers for Image, IDW, I will let them know like the cover artist is an up and coming artist from Montreal, so I'm bigging up my artists as well. Let them know that I've given copies to Kevin Eastman, Stan Sakai. It's not really relevant, but yet it is a truth that I'm sharing with them. Michael T. Gilbert has given artwork. The Day brothers, Dan and David Day, who are legends at Marvel, Canadian legends, giving whatever additional information, as long as they're still there and still engaged, which helps them make a decision saying, you know what, I want to try this. And even to go a little bit further, sometimes I actually just get into conversations with people. I don't even have to do the direct sale right away, where I could talk to people about what they feel about independent comic books, because that's what I'm selling. I sell independent comic books, my own comic books that none of these people know about. So that is the upward challenge. Most comic book sellers and creators, indie comic book creators, will tell you, hell, even some of the showrunners of these shows will tell you that comic book conventions are pop culture conventions now. They're not comic book conventions. New independent comic books are the smallest percentage of vendors you'll see at Comic Cons. So we are in the minority, even though it's a Comic Con. You'll see more pop sellers, you'll see more crafters, you'll see more celebrities and cosplayers than you'll see independent comic books. So it is actually an uphill battle in order to convince people to buy your books. And so you have to take the challenge and know that you have to differentiate yourself from everything else, because most people there to buy what they know. But that doesn't mean they're not willing to take a chance on something new. So one of the other techniques I have is that I will actually engage people about what they think about independent comic books. And my favorite thing to bring up is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Because, as popular and as mainstream as they are now, at one time they were an indie darling. They were an indie comic book. It was a weird idea back in the 80s. And it wasn't until the cartoon series in 87, 88 that, things went gangbusters with the Turtles. But a lot of people fully believe that if they were given the chance, if the Turtles were introduced today, they would jump on it because they want something new, especially in a time of superhero fatigue and people getting tired of Marvel, DC, Disney, Warner pumping out the same thing over and over and over again, and the complaints of woke and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of people say they want new. So I seize upon that. And in conversation, just talk to it. And a lot of people, even the people who are not initially interested in buying my books, they are interested in having this conversation because we're all comic book geeks at a Comic Con. This is the stuff we all talk about. So I will bring it up and engage in conversation about, like, what do you think about indie comic books? Are you interested in something different? Okay, you are? What kind of different book? Like, what is it that gets your attention? And they'll say, like, I'm open to everything. And I was like, okay, do you mind if I show you my book? So that's another entry. So instead of just a hard sell, just based on a confused look of what they're looking at, I will engage them on your terms. Are you interested in trying something new? And then I'll introduce them to something new and go from there. And I said, many times it doesn't result in a sale, but for the past 2 years, I've had success where my books have sold very well, but you have to put the work in it and you have to communicate. And there's times where after shows, my daughter will laugh at me because I like talking like this because my voice is so sore from talking for like 10 hours each day for a 3-day show. But it's what you have to do. But the ultimate payoff is that, again, you create a fan base, you create people who now have your book, and now they're experiencing your creation. And those sales help you come out with issue 2, issue 3, issue 4, and so on and so forth. So I just want to, explain my views on communication. But you cannot stand there because God knows how many shows I've been to, and it doesn't matter if they're novelists, artists, crafters. You'll see them just standing there, and I'm sure they are the friendliest people in the world, but they're afraid to engage with people. They don't want to come off as pushy. And you just talking to people, there's nothing wrong with it. Because again, you pay to be there. You pay to have that booth. You got to make that money back, and the transportation and the hotel and all that. So you have to create techniques in order to engage with people and do it in a friendly way, in a positive way, because you believe in your product and all you're trying to do is help them see the benefit and why they should believe in it too. There's no harm in it. So that's video number 1, and I'm thinking about other stuff to discuss. Please leave a comment. Let me know, not just thumbs ups. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you would like me to talk about, because I know there's many things I could talk about. on display, as I brought up before, and even the economics. That's the one I'm going to get to, because this year, 2024, I'm going, after so many years of doing Comic Cons, I'm going in a different direction this time. I'm still going to attend Comic Cons, but I did my financials, working out the numbers at year end, and I realized a hard truth, even with some of the most successful shows I've done. But, anyways, we'll get to that. So, please like, subscribe, and most importantly, more than anything, leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts and your feelings and your experiences as well. I'm the homie Game Guru from Zelfa Comics. Thanks a lot. All the best for this year. I'll see you again.